Lucas Reed stood in the parking lot of Annie's Cafe, keys in hand, seconds from driving away. His phone buzzed with another text from his friends. "You better not bail." But backing out felt smarter than walking into whatever setup they'd orchestrated. At 32, he'd learned the hard way that people who meant well often created the worst complications. Single fathers raising kids alone didn't have room for blind dates or romantic experiments. He had routines, responsibilities, and a life that worked precisely because he kept it small. Then the cafe door opened. A woman stepped out, scanning the lot with the same hesitant expression he probably wore. Their eyes met. Neither smiled. Neither left. And in that suspended moment before either could retreat, Lucas made a choice he couldn't explain. He stayed. "Hey, thanks for stopping by. I'm about to tell you a story about a man who almost walked away from the best mistake of his life. If you want to see how a terrible setup became something real, stick around until the end. And hey, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, even the ones you didn't ask for." The morning had started with a text Lucas should have ignored. "We set you up. Tonight, 6 p.m. Annie's Cafe. Don't be a coward." He'd stared at the message from Derek for a full minute, coffee cooling in his hand before replying with a single word. "No." 3 more texts followed within seconds. One from Derek, one from Marcus, one from Jen, Derek's wife, who somehow always knew how to phrase things so refusal felt like betrayal. "You've been alone for 4 years, Lucas. 4 years? This isn't healthy. She's nice." "Really? Just meet her. 1 hour. What's the worst that could happen? Stop hiding behind Ellie. She'd want you to be happy." That last one made him grip his phone hard enough the case creaked. They meant well, he knew that, but meaning well didn't make them right. His daughter Ellie wasn't an excuse. She was the reason. The reason he worked steady hours, kept a clean house, showed up to parent-teacher conferences, built a life that didn't require explanations or complications. He dated sporadically in the past couple years. Nothing that lasted, nothing that mattered. Women either wanted more than he could give or treated Ellie like an obstacle. Eventually, he stopped trying. But Derek and Marcus weren't the type to let things rest. And Jen had a way of framing care as obligation. By noon, Lucas had received 6 more messages, a voicemail, and a screenshot of the cafe's address with a pin dropped on his Maps app. By 3 o'clock, he'd run out of excuses that didn't sound defensive. By 5:30, he was showering with the grim determination of a man walking into an ambush. Ellie sat on the couch watching cartoons when he emerged, hair damp, wearing the one button-down shirt he owned that didn't have paint stains. She looked up, eyes wide with theatrical suspicion. "You look weird," she announced. "Thanks, kid. Where are you going?" "Out?" "Out where?" Lucas crouched beside her, tugging gently on one of her braids. "Just meeting some people. Mrs. Calloway's coming over in a few minutes to hang out with you." Ellie's face scrunched. "Is it a date?" He hesitated. Lying to a 7-year-old felt wrong, but so did explaining the absurdity of what his friends had orchestrated. "Sort of. Maybe. I don't know yet." "With a lady?" "Probably." "Is she nice?" "I have no idea." Ellie considered this with the gravity of a judge. "If she's mean, you should leave." Lucas smiled despite himself. "Deal." Mrs. Calloway arrived at 5:45, a retired schoolteacher with the energy of someone half her age. She waved Lucas off with a knowing grin, and he escaped before Ellie could launch into another interrogation. The drive to Annie's Cafe took 12 minutes. He spent 11 of them considering whether turning around would make him a coward or just practical. The cafe sat on the edge of downtown, a renovated brick building with large windows and string lights that glowed warm against the early autumn dusk. It was the kind of place people took their laptops to look productive while nursing overpriced lattes. Lucas had been here twice, once for a business lunch that wasn't really business, once because Ellie wanted a muffin the size of her head. He parked in the back lot, engine idling, and checked his phone. No new messages, no last-minute cancellations, no escape hatch. He could still leave, send a polite text, blame traffic, blame Ellie, blame anything. Instead, he turned off the engine and sat in silence. The cafe door opened. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, Dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, wearing jeans and a gray sweater that looked comfortable rather than calculated. She scanned the parking lot with the expression of someone who'd also been talked into this against their better judgment. Her gaze landed on Lucas through the windshield. Neither of them moved. It wasn't recognition. Neither knew what the other looked like. But there was something in the mutual hesitation, the shared uncertainty, that made it obvious. She was the setup. He was the mark. And both of them were weighing whether to bolt. Lucas exhaled slowly, grabbed his keys, and opened the door. She met him halfway across the lot. "Lucas?" she asked. "Yeah. Mara?" "That's me." They stood there, awkward and wary, two strangers corralled into proximity by well-meaning friends. Mara's eyes were sharp but kind, the kind of eyes that had learned to read people quickly. She didn't offer a hand. Neither did he. "So," she said after a moment, "this is weird." Lucas almost laughed. "Very. Did your friends ambush you too?" "Text ambush, you?" "Phone call ambush, followed by guilt trip." She shook her head, mouth quirking into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I almost didn't come." "Same. But here we are." "Here we are." Mara glanced back at the cafe, then at him. "Look, I'm not great at this. I haven't dated in, She paused, calculating. "A long time. And I'm guessing you're not either, or they wouldn't have pushed so hard." 4 years, Lucas admitted, give or take. 5 for me. She exhaled, some of the tension easing from her shoulders. "So how about this? We go in, we get coffee, we talk for 30 minutes like normal humans. If it's terrible, we blame our friends and leave. If it's not terrible," she shrugged, "we figure it out from there." It was the most reasonable thing anyone had said to him in weeks. "Deal," Lucas said. They walked inside together, and the cafe smelled like roasted beans, cinnamon, and old wood. It was quieter than Lucas expected, just a handful of people scattered across mismatched tables, soft jazz playing from invisible speakers. Mara ordered a latte. Lucas ordered black coffee. They claimed a corner table near the window, far enough from other customers to talk without being overheard. For the first few minutes, conversation was stilted. Surface-level questions lobbed back and forth like a tennis match neither wanted to win. "Where do you work? What do you do? How do you know Derek and Jen?" Mara was a physical therapist at a clinic downtown. She'd known Jen since college. She liked her job but found the administrative side exhausting. She lived alone in a small house near the river. Lucas worked in construction management. He'd known Derek since high school. He had a daughter. He lived on the outskirts of town in a cabin he'd been fixing up for the past 3 years. Standard answers. Safe answers. But then Mara asked, "So what's it like raising a kid on your own?" And something in the way she asked, not pitying, not probing, just genuinely curious, made Lucas answer honestly. "Terrifying," he said. "Most days I'm convinced I'm doing it wrong. But she's a good kid. Better than I deserve, probably." Mara's expression softened. "I doubt that. You don't know me." "True. But people who think they're screwing up usually care more than people who assume they're doing fine." Lucas blinked. That hit closer than expected. "What about you?" he asked, deflecting. "Why haven't you dated in 5 years?" Mara's smile faded slightly. She wrapped both hands around her latte, staring into the foam. "Because the last time I tried, it ended badly, really badly, and I decided I'd rather be alone than go through that again." There was weight in those words, more than she was saying. Lucas didn't push. "I get that," he said quietly. She looked up, studying him. "Yeah, I think you do." The conversation shifted after that. Less guarded, more real. They talked about work, about frustrations and small victories. Mara told him about a patient who'd regained mobility after a car accident and cried in her office. Lucas told her about the deck he'd built for Ellie's birthday, how she'd insisted on helping and nearly hammered her own thumb twice. They talked about books neither had time to read, movies they'd meant to watch, the weird loneliness of being surrounded by people but still feeling separate. Mara admitted she hated cooking but loved baking. Lucas admitted he was terrible at both, but Ellie didn't seem to mind. 30 minutes became an hour, then 2. The cafe started to empty. The barista wiped down tables. Lucas glanced at his phone. 8:45. Mrs. Calloway had texted once. Ellie's asleep. Take your time. He showed Mara the message. She smiled. You have good people looking out for you. I do, Lucas admitted, even when they're obnoxious about it. Same. Mara set down her empty cup. So, verdict? Lucas leaned back, considering. Not terrible. High praise. I don't give it lightly. She laughed, a real laugh, low and genuine. Fair enough. They stood, gathering coats and keys. Outside, the air had turned cool, carrying the scent of rain that hadn't fallen yet. They walked slowly toward the parking lot, neither in a hurry to end the evening. So, Mara said as they reached her car, do we do this again? Or do we tell our friends we tried and it didn't work? Lucas hesitated, not because he didn't want to see her again, but because wanting to see her again meant opening a door he'd kept shut for years. It meant risking the routines, the stability, the careful life he'd built. But Mara wasn't asking for promises. She was asking for honesty. I'd like to do this again, he said. Her smile was small but real. Yeah, me too. They exchanged numbers. No grand gestures, no lingering goodbye, just a simple, I'll text you, and a wave as she drove off. Lucas sat in his truck for a moment, staring at her name in his contacts. Then he texted Derek. Fine. You were right. Don't let it go to your head. The reply came instantly. Too late. Lucas drove home with the windows down, cool air rushing through the cab, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was running from something. He felt like he was moving toward it. When he got home, Mrs. Calloway was reading on the couch. She looked up with a knowing smile. Good night? Yeah, Lucas said. Actually, yeah. I'm glad. She left with a pat on his shoulder, and Lucas checked on Ellie. She was sprawled across her bed, one arm dangling off the side, hair a wild tangle across her pillow. He pulled the blanket over her, kissed her forehead, and whispered, Love you, kid. Then he went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared out the window at the dark woods beyond his property. His phone buzzed. Thanks for tonight. I needed that more than I realized. Lucas typed back. Same here. Another buzz. When are you free again? He smiled. I'll figure it out. Good. He set the phone down and finished his water in silence. The cabin creaked around him, familiar and steady. But something had shifted. Not broken, not disrupted, just opened. And for the first time in 4 years, Lucas Reed wasn't afraid of what might come next. The next morning, Ellie interrogated him over breakfast. So was she nice? Lucas flipped a pancake, hiding a smile. Yeah, she was nice. Are you going to see her again? Maybe. What's her name? Mara. Ellie tested the name, lips moving silently. That's pretty. Does she like kids? I don't know yet. You should ask. I will. Ellie nodded, satisfied, and returned to drowning her pancakes in syrup. Lucas watched her, chest tight with something he couldn't name. Love, fear, hope, maybe all three. Later that day, he texted Mara. Ellie wants to know if you like kids. The reply came quickly. I work with people in pain all day. Kids are a relief. Good answer. Was that a test? Maybe. Did I pass? We'll see. They made plans for the following weekend. Nothing formal, just coffee again. But this time it felt less like an obligation and more like a choice. Lucas told Derek, who immediately started planning double dates. Lucas shut that down fast. Let me figure out what this is first, he said. Derek grinned. You like her? I don't know her yet. But you want to? Lucas didn't answer. He didn't need to. The week passed in a blur of work and routines. Lucas framed a new house, supervised a pour, argued with a supplier about delayed materials. Ellie had a school project on animals. They built a shoebox diorama of a forest, complete with tiny deer made from clay. She narrated the entire ecosystem with intense seriousness, and Lucas found himself grinning despite the glue stuck to his fingers. At night, he and Mara texted. Nothing deep, just small things. How was your day? What are you reading? Ellie's diorama is a masterpiece. Your patient sounds like a fighter. It was easy, comfortable, and that scared him more than he wanted to admit. By Friday, he was nervous. Not the jittery anxiety of a first date, this was quieter. The fear of wanting something and knowing it could disappear. He'd built a life that didn't depend on anyone else. Adding someone meant risk, meant vulnerability. But when Saturday came and he pulled into the cafe parking lot, Mara was already there, leaning against her car with a coffee in hand. She saw him and waved. Lucas parked, climbed out, and walked over. "You're early," he said. "So are you." "Didn't want to be late." "Same." They stood there, smiling like idiots, and Lucas realized something. He wasn't afraid anymore. Or maybe he was, but he was doing it anyway. And that, he thought, made all the difference. They walked into the cafe together, and this time there was no hesitation at the door, no awkward pause before sitting down. Mara ordered the same latte. Lucas stuck with black coffee. They claimed the same corner table, and it felt deliberate now, like they were establishing something, however small. "So," Mara said, settling into her chair. "How was the interrogation?" Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Interrogation?" "From your daughter. I'm guessing she had questions." He laughed. "You have no idea. She wanted to know your name, if you were nice, and if you liked kids. Smart kid." "She has her moments." Mara wrapped her hands around her cup, her expression thoughtful. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you were nice. That I didn't know yet if you liked kids, but I'd find out." "And she was okay with that?" "She seemed satisfied, for now." Lucas paused. "She's protective. Of me. Of our life. If she thinks someone's going to mess that up, she'll let me know." "She sounds like she's been through something." Lucas's jaw tightened slightly. He looked out the window, watching cars pass on the street. "Her mom left when she was 3. Just walked out one day and didn't come back. No explanation, no goodbye. Ellie doesn't remember much, but she remembers enough to know people leave." Mara's face softened with understanding, not pity. "That's a lot for a little kid to carry." "It is, which is why I don't bring people into her life unless I'm sure. I can't have her getting attached to someone who's going to disappear." "That makes sense." Mara met his eyes. "For what it's worth, I'm not the disappearing type. But I get why you'd need to see that for yourself." Lucas nodded slowly. There was something steadying about the way she said it, not defensive, not making promises she couldn't keep, just honest. "What about you?" he asked. "You mentioned your last relationship ended badly. How badly are we talking?" Mara took a long sip of her latte, buying time. When she set the cup down, her expression had shifted, more guarded, but not closed off. "Badly enough that I spent 2 years in therapy trying to untangle it. My ex-husband was controlling. Not physically abusive, but everything else. He needed to know where I was, who I talked to, what I spent money on. He made me feel like I couldn't trust my own judgment." Lucas felt his chest tighten with anger, not at her, but for her. "How long were you married?" 7 years. The first 2 were good. The next 5 were me trying to convince myself things would get better." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I finally left when I realized I was apologizing for things I didn't do just to keep the peace. That's when I knew I'd lost myself completely." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Leaving was the best thing I ever did. It just took me a while to believe I deserved better." She looked at him carefully. "That's why I haven't dated much. I needed to make sure I wouldn't fall into the same patterns, that I could recognize red flags before I ignored them again." Lucas leaned forward, elbows on the table. "For the record, I don't need to know where you are every second of the day, and you don't owe me explanations for choices that are yours to make." Something in Mara's posture relaxed. "That's good to hear." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared histories settling between them, not as burdens, but as context, as proof that neither of them had arrived here untouched by life. "So," Lucas said, steering the conversation toward lighter ground, "tell me something good. Something that makes you happy." Mara's face brightened. "Baking. I know it sounds simple, but there's something about measuring ingredients, following a recipe, and watching something come together exactly like it's supposed to. It's predictable in a way nothing else is." "What do you make?" Mostly bread, sourdough, focaccia, brioche, but also cookies, cakes, pastries. I made a lemon tart last week that turned out perfect, and I ate half of it in one sitting. Lucas grinned. No judgment here. I can barely make toast without burning it. Really? Really? Ellie's convinced I'm going to poison us both someday. Mara laughed. Well, if you ever need baked goods, I'm your person. I'm holding you to that. They talked for another hour, the conversation weaving through easy topics and deeper ones. Mara told him about her patients, the ones who fought hard, the ones who gave up too easily, the ones who reminded her why she loved her job. Lucas told her about the houses he'd helped build, the satisfaction of watching empty lots transform into homes where families would live and grow. By the time they left the cafe, the sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Mara walked Lucas to his truck, hands shoved into her jacket pockets. So, she said, this is starting to feel less like a setup and more like something real. Lucas nodded. Yeah, it is. That doesn't scare you? Terrifies me, actually. She smiled. Good. I'd be worried if you weren't at least a little scared. He opened his truck door but didn't get in. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you agree to this? The blind date, I mean. If you've been avoiding dating for 5 years, why say yes to your friends now? Mara considered the question, her gaze drifting to the street. Because I realized I was using caution as an excuse to stay stuck. I was so afraid of making another mistake that I wasn't letting myself try. And that's not healing. That's just hiding. She looked back at him. What about you? Why'd you show up? Because my friends were relentless, and because some part of me knew they were right. I've been so focused on being enough for Ellie that I forgot I'm allowed to want more. Are you? Wanting more? Lucas held her gaze. Yeah, I think I am. Mara's smile was soft, almost shy. Me too. They stood there for a beat longer, neither wanting to leave but both aware the evening was ending. Finally, Lucas climbed into his truck. Text me when you get home, Mara said. I will. He drove away slowly, watching her in the rearview mirror until she got into her car. His phone buzzed before he even made it to the main road. I'm glad we did this again. Lucas typed back at a red light. Same. When are you free next? Wednesday? I'm off at 6. Works for me. Good. He smiled the whole drive home. When he walked through the door, Ellie was on the couch building something elaborate with blocks. She looked up, eyes narrowing with suspicion. You're smiling. I'm allowed to smile. Not like that. That's a weird smile. Lucas sat down beside her, nudging one of her block towers. It was a good day. Did you see Mara? I did. Is she your girlfriend now? Not yet. We're just getting to know each other. Ellie frowned, thinking hard. But you like her. Yeah, kid. I like her. Okay. She returned to her blocks, apparently satisfied. Then, without looking up, she added, If she makes you smile like that, she's probably okay. Lucas's chest tightened. Thanks, Elle. You're welcome. That Wednesday, Lucas met Mara at a small Italian restaurant downtown. It wasn't fancy, checkered tablecloths, candles and wine bottles, a chalkboard menu on the wall. But the food was good, and the atmosphere felt right. Casual enough to relax, intimate enough to matter. They ordered pasta and shared garlic bread. Mara told him about a patient who'd walked unassisted for the first time in months. Lucas told her about a foundation pour that went sideways when the concrete truck got stuck in mud. Did you fix it? Mara asked. Eventually, took 3 hours and a lot of swearing, but we got it done. You like problem solving. I like building things that last. Problems are just part of the process. Mara tilted her head, studying him. That's a good way to look at it. What about you? What do you like about your job? Watching people reclaim their bodies. Sounds dramatic, but it's true. Someone comes in barely able to move, and weeks later they're walking, lifting, living again. It's not magic, it's work, but it's work that matters. Sounds like we're both in the business of fixing things. Maybe that's why this feels easy. Lucas raised his glass. To fixing things. Mara clinked hers against his. To fixing things. As the evening went on, the conversation deepened. They talked about fear, what scared them, what they'd overcome, what they were still working on. Mara admitted she still had nightmares about her ex showing up unannounced. Lucas admitted he sometimes woke up in a panic thinking Ellie was gone. "Does that ever get easier?" Mara asked. "A little, but I don't think it ever goes away completely. You just learn to live with it." "That's kind of sad." "Maybe, but it also means you care, and that's not a bad thing." Mara smiled. "You're wiser than you look." "I've had a lot of practice being wrong. Eventually, you figure some things out." After dinner, they walked through downtown past closed shops and streetlights just starting to flicker on. Mara looped her arm through his, and Lucas didn't pull away. It felt natural. "Right." "Can I tell you something?" Mara said. "Of course." "I haven't felt this comfortable with someone in a long time. Maybe ever." Lucas stopped walking, turning to face her. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She met his eyes. "I know it's only been a few dates, and I know we're both being careful, but this feels different. In a good way." Lucas's heart hammered in his chest. "It does. So what do we do with that?" "I think we keep going. Keep being honest. Keep showing up." Mara nodded. "I can do that." "Me too." They stood there under the streetlight, close enough that Lucas could see the flecks of gold in her eyes. He wanted to kiss her. The urge was so strong it almost hurt. But something held him back, not fear exactly, more like reverence, like this moment mattered too much to rush. Mara seemed to sense it. She reached up, brushed her fingers along his jaw, then stepped back with a small smile. "Not yet," she said softly. "Not yet," Lucas agreed. "But soon." They both knew it. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Coffee on Saturdays, dinner on Wednesdays, texts throughout the day. Nothing heavy, just small updates. "How's your morning?" "This patient is driving me crazy. Ellie built a fort out of couch cushions and won't let me in." Mara started asking about Ellie more. What she liked to do, what she was learning in school, whether she had friends. Lucas appreciated that she didn't push to meet her yet, but also didn't pretend she didn't exist. "She's the most important person in my life," Lucas said one night over the phone. "If this is going to go anywhere, she'll need to be okay with it." "I get that," Mara said, "and I'm not in a hurry. But when you're ready, I'd like to meet her." "Yeah, I'd like that too." 3 weeks into whatever this was, Lucas invited Mara to the cabin. Not for anything formal, just to see where he lived, to meet Ellie casually. She said yes without hesitation. The morning of her visit, Lucas cleaned like a man possessed, vacuumed, scrubbed counters, hid clutter. Ellie watched with amusement. "You're nervous," she said. "I'm not nervous." "You vacuumed twice." Lucas sighed. "Fine. I'm a little nervous." "Why?" "Because I want her to like it here, and I want you to like her." Ellie considered this. "What if I don't?" "Then we'll talk about it, but give her a chance, okay?" "Okay?" Mara arrived at noon carrying a canvas bag. She smiled when Lucas opened the door, but there was nervousness in her eyes too. "Hey," she said. "Hey, come in." She stepped inside, taking in the open living room, the wood-beam ceiling, the large windows overlooking the trees. "Lucas, this is beautiful." "Thanks. It's a work in progress." Ellie appeared from the hallway, hands behind her back, studying Mara with solemn intensity. Mara crouched down to her level. "You must be Ellie," she said. "I've heard a lot about you." "Good things?" "The best things." Ellie's suspicion eased slightly. "What's in the bag?" Mara grinned. "I made cookies. Chocolate chip. Your dad said you might like them." Ellie's eyes widened. "Can I have one now?" Lucas laughed. "After lunch." They ate sandwiches on the back porch, Ellie peppering Mara with questions. "What's your favorite color? Do you have pets? Can you do a cartwheel?" Mara answered each one patiently, seriously, like Ellie's opinions mattered. And slowly, Ellie's walls came down. After lunch, Mara brought out the cookies. Ellie ate 3, declared them the best she'd ever had, then dragged Mara outside to see the treehouse Lucas had built. Lucas watched from the porch as Mara climbed the ladder, laughing when Ellie pointed out every detail, the pulley system for snacks, the blanket fort inside, the window facing the creek. and something in Lucas's chest settled. This could work. Later, after Ellie went inside to play, Mara sat beside Lucas on the porch steps. "She's wonderful," Mara said. "She liked you." "You think so?" "She doesn't share her treehouse with just anyone." Mara smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. Lucas wrapped an arm around her, and they sat there in comfortable silence, watching the afternoon light filter through the trees. "This feels right," Mara said quietly. "Yeah," Lucas agreed. "It really does." And for the first time in 4 years, Lucas Reed let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, his life had room for more than survival. Maybe it had room for love. The following weeks blurred into a rhythm that felt almost dangerously comfortable. Mara came to the cabin twice more, and each time Ellie grew more animated, more willing to include her in their small world. They baked together, Mara teaching Ellie how to knead dough while Lucas watched from the doorway with his arms crossed and a smile he couldn't hide. They walked the trails behind the property, Ellie pointing out birds and plants with the confidence of someone who'd claimed this land as her own. And slowly, carefully, Lucas let his guard down. On a Friday evening in late October, Mara texted him after Ellie had gone to bed. "Can I call you?" Lucas dialed immediately. "Everything okay?" "Yeah." Her voice sounded tight. "I just needed to hear your voice." "What happened?" There was a long pause, the kind that made Lucas's stomach drop. "I ran into my ex today, at the grocery store. He was with someone, a woman I didn't recognize, and he acted like he didn't even see me, just walked right past." Lucas sat down on the couch, gripping the phone tighter. "Did he say anything to you?" "No. That's the thing. He didn't acknowledge me at all. And I know that should feel like a relief, but it didn't. It felt like I didn't matter enough to even warrant a hello. Like those 7 years meant nothing." "They meant something to you. That's what matters." "I know, I do. But seeing him just brought everything back. All the doubt, all the second guessing. I started wondering if I overreacted, if things were really as bad as I remember." Lucas's jaw tightened. He'd seen this pattern before, not with Mara, but with his sister, who'd spent years in a relationship that hollowed her out from the inside. The way abusers worked wasn't with fists alone. It was with erosion, with making you question your own reality until you didn't trust yourself anymore. "Mara," he said quietly, "you didn't overreact. If you felt like you needed to leave, then you needed to leave. Don't let seeing him rewrite what you lived through." "I'm trying not to. But it's hard." "I know it is, but you're not alone in this. You've got people who see you clearly, who know what you went through wasn't okay." She exhaled shakily. "Thank you. I needed to hear that. Any time, I mean that." They talked for another hour, Mara's voice gradually steadying as she worked through the collision of past and present. Lucas didn't offer solutions or try to fix what couldn't be fixed with words. He just listened, and sometimes that was enough. When they finally hung up, Lucas sat in the dark living room for a long time, staring at nothing. He thought about the fragility of healing, how quickly old wounds could reopen. He thought about Mara's strength, the way she'd rebuilt herself from scratch and was still standing. And he thought about what it meant to love someone who carried scars you couldn't see. Because somewhere along the way, without planning it or announcing it, he'd fallen in love with her. The realization didn't come with fireworks or grand epiphanies. It settled over him like the first snow of winter, quiet, inevitable, transforming everything it touched. He didn't tell her. Not yet. But he felt it in his bones. The next morning, Ellie asked why he looked tired. "Just didn't sleep great," Lucas said, pouring her cereal. "Were you worried about Mara?" He glanced at her, surprised. "How'd you know that?" "Because you get a crease right here when you're worried." She pointed to the space between her eyebrows. "And you had it last night." Lucas sat down across from her. "You're too smart for your own good." "I know." She took a bite of cereal, chewing thoughtfully. "Is Mara okay?" "She will be. She just had a hard day." "Because of her mean ex-husband?" Lucas blinked. "How do you know about that?" "I heard you guys talking on the porch last week. I wasn't spying. I just came outside and you didn't notice." He should have been annoyed, but mostly he was impressed. "Yeah, because of him. But she's strong. She'll be okay." Ellie nodded seriously. "I like her, Dad." "Yeah?" "Yeah. She's nice to me and she doesn't act fake. And she makes you smile more. Lucas's chest tightened. That's true. So are you going to marry her? He nearly choked on his coffee. Whoa, we're not there yet, kid. But you like her a lot. I do. And she likes you. I think so. Then you should marry her. That's how it works. Lucas laughed despite himself. It's a little more complicated than that. Why? Because people need time to make sure they're right for each other, to build trust. Ellie considered this. How much time? I don't know. There's no rule book. That's dumb. Yeah, Lucas agreed. Sometimes it is. Later that day, Mara called him. Her voice sounded lighter, more like herself. Hey, she said. I'm sorry about last night. I didn't mean to unload on you like that. Don't apologize. I'm glad you called. I've been thinking about what you said, about not letting him rewrite my story. And you're right. I lived through it. I know what it was. Seeing him doesn't change that. Good. But it did make me realize something. What's that? That I'm still carrying fear I don't need anymore. I left him 3 years ago. I've done the work. I've built a life I'm proud of. And I'm letting the ghost of him keep me from fully moving forward. Lucas leaned against the kitchen counter. What does moving forward look like? I don't know yet. But I think it starts with trusting myself. And trusting you. You can trust me, Mara. I know, that's the scary part. Because if I trust you and it goes wrong, it's going to hurt a lot more than staying guarded. Yeah, it will. But staying guarded means you're living half a life. She laughed softly. When did you get so wise? I've had a lot of practice screwing things up. Eventually you learn. Well, I'm grateful you did. They made plans to see each other that evening. Mara suggested taking a walk at the state park, somewhere neutral and open, where they could just be together without the pressure of performance. Lucas agreed immediately. He dropped Ellie off at Derek and Jen's house, and during Derek's knowing grin and Jen's enthusiastic hug, Ellie ran off to play with their kids, and Lucas escaped before the interrogation could begin. He met Mara in the parking lot of the state park just as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. She was leaning against her car, hands in her jacket pockets, hair loose around her shoulders. She smiled when she saw him, and Lucas felt that familiar tug in his chest. They walked the main trail without speaking at first, just moving in sync, shoulders occasionally brushing. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Other hikers passed them, couples, families, solo walkers with dogs. But Lucas barely noticed. His attention was on Mara, on the way she seemed more relaxed than she had in days. I've been thinking, she said eventually, about us, about what this is becoming. Yeah? I don't want to rush anything, but I also don't want to keep pretending this is casual. It's not casual for me. Not anymore. Lucas stopped walking, turning to face her. It's not casual for me either. Mara's eyes searched his. So what do we call this? I don't know. What do you want to call it? I want to call it real. I want to stop hedging. I want to be able to say I'm with you and mean it. Lucas felt something unlock in his chest. Then let's do that. Yeah? Yeah, I'm with you, Mara. Fully. If you're ready for that. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the relief and fear warring in her expression. I'm ready. I'm terrified. But I'm ready. Lucas cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. We'll figure it out as we go. We don't have to have all the answers right now. Promise me something, Mara said. Anything. If this gets hard, and it will, promise me you won't disappear, that you'll talk to me, that you'll stay. Lucas's throat tightened. I promise. And I need the same from you. You have it. They stood there in the middle of the trail, the world moving around them, and Lucas leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't their first kiss. That had happened 2 weeks earlier, a brief and tentative thing after dinner. But this was different. This was a claim, a commitment, a choice they were both making with full awareness of what it meant. When they pulled apart, Mara was smiling, her eyes bright. Okay, we're doing this. We're doing this. They walked the rest of the trail hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. Mara told him about her week, about a patient who'd made her laugh until she cried, Lucas told her about a design flaw he'd caught just before a build started, saving the project thousands of dollars and weeks of delays. They talked about Ellie, about the holidays coming up, about whether they were ready to navigate that minefield together. "Thanksgiving's in a few weeks," Mara said. "Do you have plans?" "Usually just me and Ellie. We cook too much food and watch bad movies." "That sounds perfect. You're welcome to join us, if you want." Mara squeezed his hand. "I'd like that." When they reached the parking lot again, the sun had set, leaving the sky streaked with orange and purple. Mara leaned against her car, pulling Lucas close. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being patient, for letting me work through my stuff without making it weird." "You don't have to thank me for that." "I know, but I'm going to anyway." Lucas kissed her again, slow and deliberate, and when they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Okay?" "I'm falling for you, hard, and I need you to know that before this goes any further." Mara's breath caught. "Lucas, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." She pulled back just enough to look him in the eye. "I'm falling for you too. I have been for a while. I was just too scared to admit it." Relief flooded through him. "Yeah? Yeah." They stood there in the near dark, holding each other like anchors in a storm, and Lucas felt the last of his defenses crumble. He'd spent 4 years building walls to keep himself and Ellie safe. And now, with this woman in his arms, he was choosing to tear them down. It was terrifying. It was also the most alive he'd felt in years. The following week passed in a haze of contentment. Mara came to the cabin for dinner twice, integrating seamlessly into their routines. She helped Ellie with homework, taught her a new recipe, and sat with Lucas on the porch after Ellie went to bed, talking until the stars came out. Everything felt easy, natural, right. And then, on a Tuesday evening, everything shifted. Lucas was at the grocery store with Ellie when his phone rang. Mara's name flashed on the screen, and he answered immediately. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was shaking. "Lucas, I need you to not panic, but I need to tell you something." His stomach dropped. "What happened?" "My ex showed up at my house, just now. He knocked on the door and asked if we could talk." Lucas's vision tunneled. "Did you let him in?" "No, I told him to leave, but he's still outside. He's sitting in his car across the street." "Have you called the police?" "Not yet. I didn't know if I was overreacting." "You're not. Call them, right now, and lock all your doors and windows." "Okay. I'm coming over." "Lucas, you don't have to." "I'm coming over. Stay on the phone with me." He heard her moving, the click of locks, the sound of blinds being drawn. Ellie looked up at him with wide eyes. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, kiddo, but we need to go, now." He abandoned the cart and hurried Ellie out to the truck. She climbed in without complaint, sensing the urgency. Lucas drove faster than he should have, phone on speaker so he could hear Mara's breathing. "Did you call the police?" he asked. "Yes, they're sending someone." "Good. What's he doing now?" "Just sitting there. He hasn't moved." "Okay. I'm 10 minutes away." "Lucas, you don't have to do this. I don't want you to put yourself in the middle of—" "Mara." His voice was firm. "I'm already in the middle of it. You're not dealing with this alone." She went quiet, but he could hear the relief in her exhale. When he pulled onto her street, a police car was already there, lights flashing. An officer was talking to a man standing beside a sedan, tall, well-dressed, gesturing animatedly. Lucas parked a few houses down and turned to Ellie. "I need you to stay in the truck, okay? Lock the doors. Don't get out for anyone but me." "Is Mara okay?" "She will be. But I need you to stay here." Ellie nodded, eyes serious. Lucas kissed her forehead, then climbed out and walked toward Mara's house. She met him at the door, face pale but composed. "You didn't have to come," she said, but her arms wrapped around him immediately. "Yes, I did." They watched from the porch as the officer talked to her ex. After a few minutes, the man got back in his car and drove away. The officer approached the house, notebook in hand. "Ma'am, he says he just wanted to talk, that there's no restraining order or history of violence." "That's correct," Mara said. "But I've asked him repeatedly not to contact me." and showing up at my house unannounced is not okay. The officer nodded. I've advised him to stay away. If he shows up again, call us immediately. We'll have it on record. Thank you. The officer left and Mara sagged against Lucas. He held her, feeling the tremor in her shoulders. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For dragging you into this. Stop. Lucas pulled back, hands on her shoulders. You didn't drag me into anything. This is what being together means. When something happens, we handle it. Together. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Lucas wiped them away with his thumbs. Do you want to come back to the cabin tonight? He asked. You shouldn't be here alone. I don't want to impose. You're not. Come on, pack a bag. She hesitated only a moment before nodding. Lucas waited while she grabbed clothes and toiletries, then walked her to her car. Ellie was still in the truck, watching everything with solemn eyes. Is she coming with us? Ellie asked when Lucas got back in. Yeah, she's going to stay with us tonight. Because of the bad man? Lucas glanced at her. Yeah. Ellie nodded. Good, she shouldn't be alone. They drove back to the cabin in convoy, Mara following close behind. When they arrived, Lucas got Ellie ready for bed while Mara sat on the couch, hands wrapped around a cup of tea he'd made her. Once Ellie was asleep, he joined Mara, sitting close enough that their knees touched. I'm sorry you had to see that, she said. Don't be. I thought I was done with him. I thought he'd moved on. Maybe he's just realizing what he lost. Mara shook her head. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to think he still has any claim on my life. He doesn't, but we'll make sure he knows that. She looked at him, eyes red but grateful. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't answered the phone. You would have handled it, because you're strong as hell. But you don't have to handle everything alone anymore. Mara set down her tea and leaned into him, and Lucas wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight. They sat like that for a long time, the cabin quiet around them, the fire crackling in the hearth. And slowly Mara's breathing evened out, the tension draining from her body. Thank you, she whispered. Always, Lucas said. And he meant it. Mara stayed the night, sleeping in Lucas's bed while he took the couch. He'd insisted despite her protests, and she'd been too exhausted to argue for long. Lucas lay awake for hours, listening to the old cabin settle around him, his mind cycling through worst-case scenarios he couldn't control. What if her ex came back? What if the police couldn't do anything? What if Mara decided this was too much, that being with Lucas meant inheriting problems she didn't sign up for? He must have dozed off eventually because he woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet voices in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and when he sat up, his back protesting the lumpy couch cushions, he found Mara and Ellie at the kitchen table. Ellie was drawing something elaborate with markers while Mara sipped coffee, still in the clothes she'd worn yesterday, hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked up when Lucas appeared in the doorway, and her smile was tired but genuine. Morning, she said softly. Morning. You sleep okay? Better than I expected. She glanced at Ellie, lowering her voice. Thank you for everything. Lucas poured himself coffee and sat down beside her. Ellie didn't look up from her drawing, but announced, Mara made toast. It's not burned. High praise, Lucas said, and Mara laughed quietly. They ate breakfast together, the three of them, and it felt so natural that Lucas had to remind himself this wasn't their everyday reality. Not yet, but it could be. The thought settled in his chest, warm and certain. After Ellie finished eating, she declared she was going to play in her room, leaving Lucas and Mara alone at the table. Mara wrapped both hands around her mug, staring into the coffee like it held answers. I need to figure out what to do, she said. I can't just pretend last night didn't happen. No, you can't. But you also don't have to figure it out alone. What are your options? I can file for a restraining order. I probably should have done it when we first separated, but I thought if I just stayed away from him, he'd leave me alone. And now? Now I know better. She met his eyes. I'm going to call a lawyer today. Get the paperwork started. Even if it feels like overkill, I need the protection. Lucas nodded. Good. And until that's in place, you're welcome here. For as long as you need. I can't just move in, Lucas. That's not fair to you or Ellie. We're not talking about moving in. We're talking about you being safe. There's a difference. Mara's expression softened. You're too good to me. I'm exactly as good as you deserve. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Her fingers were warm, her grip firm. I meant what I said last night. About us. About this being real. But I need you to understand that my ex showing up might not be a one-time thing. He's unpredictable. And if he finds out about you, about Ellie, I don't know how he'll react. Lucas squeezed her hand. Then we deal with it, together. But you're not facing him alone, and you're not walking away from this to protect me. That's not how this works. You don't know what you're signing up for. Maybe not, but I'm signing up anyway. Mara's eyes filled with tears, and she blinked them back quickly. How are you so calm about this? Because panic doesn't help. Action does. So we take it one step at a time. You call the lawyer, we make sure your locks are solid, we document everything, and we keep living our lives. She nodded slowly. Okay, one step at a time. Exactly. They spent the rest of the morning quietly. Mara made some calls from the porch, speaking in low tones to a lawyer who agreed to meet with her later that week. Lucas worked on fixing a leaky faucet in the bathroom, a project he'd been putting off for months. Ellie played with her toys, occasionally wandering over to check on Mara, as if making sure she was still there. Around noon, Mara's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and Lucas saw her face go pale. It's him, she said. Don't answer it. What if... Don't answer it. Let it go to voicemail. If he threatens you, it's evidence. Mara let the call go unanswered, but her hands were shaking. A minute later, a voicemail notification appeared. She put the phone on speaker, and they listened together. Her ex's voice was calm, almost friendly, which somehow made it worse. Mara, it's me. Look, I know I shouldn't have shown up like that. I just wanted to talk. I miss you. I miss us. Can we just meet for coffee? No pressure, just talk, call me back. Mara deleted the voicemail immediately, her jaw tight. He always does this. Acts like everything's fine, like he's the reasonable one and I'm overreacting. You're not overreacting. That voicemail? That's manipulation. He knows you told him not to contact you, and he's doing it anyway. I know that, but hearing his voice just... She stopped, shaking her head. It takes me right back to feeling small, to doubting myself. Lucas stepped closer, his voice steady. You're not small, and you're not doubting yourself. You know exactly what's happening here. He's testing boundaries, seeing if you'll give in, and you're not going to. Mara took a shaky breath. No, I'm not. Good. Now save that voicemail. Forward it to your lawyer and block his number. She did, right there in front of him, her fingers moving with determination. When it was done, she looked up at Lucas with something like relief. Thank you, she said. You're doing all the hard work. I'm just reminding you that you can. Later that afternoon, Lucas drove Mara back to her house so she could grab more clothes and check on things. He insisted on going inside with her, and she didn't argue. The house was quiet, undisturbed, but Mara moved through it quickly, gathering what she needed with the efficiency of someone who didn't want to linger. As they were leaving, Lucas noticed a car parked down the street, a sedan that looked familiar. He didn't say anything, didn't want to alarm Mara, but he made a mental note of the license plate. Once they were back in his truck, he texted Derek. Need a favor. Can you run a plate for me? Derek's response came within minutes. What's going on? Just run it. I'll explain later. Fine. Send it. Lucas sent the plate number, then set his phone aside and focused on driving. Mara was staring out the window, lost in thought. You okay? He asked. I will be. I just hate feeling like I'm running, like I'm letting him control my life again. You're not running. You're being smart. There's a difference. It doesn't feel different. That's because you're still in the middle of it. But trust me, you're doing the right thing. She nodded, but Lucas could see the doubt lingering in her expression. That evening, Derek called him back while Mara was helping Ellie with a puzzle. So I ran that plate, Derek said. Registered to a Nathan Holloway. Ring any bells? Lucas's jaw tightened. Nathan Holloway. Mara's ex. Yeah, it does. You want to tell me what's going on? Lucas stepped outside, closing the door behind him. He explained the situation in quick, clipped sentences. The grocery store encounter, Nathan showing up at Mara's house, the phone call, the car parked down the street. Derek was quiet for a moment. Lucas, this guy sounds like trouble. I know. You need to be careful. If he's escalating, things could get messy. That's why she's staying here and why she's filing for a restraining order. Good, but watch your back. And hers. Guys like this don't let go easy. I know, Lucas said again. Thanks for the help. Anytime. And hey, if you need backup, you know where to find me. Lucas hung up and stood on the porch for a moment, staring out at the darkening woods. He didn't like the feeling creeping up his spine, the sense that this was just the beginning, not the end. But he pushed it down, straightened his shoulders, and went back inside. Mara looked up when he entered, her expression questioning. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah, just checking in with Derek. She didn't press, and Lucas was grateful. The rest of the evening passed quietly. They ate dinner, watched a movie with Ellie, and settled into the kind of domestic routine that felt both foreign and right. After Ellie went to bed, Lucas and Mara sat on the couch, close but not touching, the silence between them heavy with unspoken things. I don't want this to be your problem, Mara said finally. It's not a problem. It's just life. Complicated, messy life. But you didn't sign up for this. Lucas turned to face her, his expression serious. I signed up for you, and you come with history, just like I do. That's not a deal breaker. It's just part of the package. Mara's eyes searched his, looking for doubt, for hesitation. She didn't find any. I'm scared, she admitted. Of him? Of losing you. Of this becoming too much. Of you waking up one day and realizing I'm not worth the trouble. Lucas reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I know what it feels like to walk away from something because it's hard. I did it once, a long time ago, and I regretted it. I'm not doing it again, especially not with you. Mara's breath hitched, and she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. Lucas wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. I love you, she whispered. The words hung in the air, fragile and fierce. Lucas's heart hammered in his chest. I love you too, he said, and it felt like stepping off a cliff and finding solid ground. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, the rest of the world falling away. And for the first time since Nathan had shown up at her door, Mara felt safe. The next few days passed in a strange kind of limbo. Mara met with her lawyer, who started the paperwork for a restraining order. She stayed at the cabin, and Lucas adjusted his work schedule to be home more. Ellie adapted with the resilience of childhood, treating Mara's presence as a given rather than a disruption. But Nathan didn't disappear. He called twice more, leaving voicemails that ranged from pleading to accusatory. Mara saved each one, forwarding them to her lawyer, her hands shaking every time she heard his voice. Lucas stayed close, a steady presence that kept her grounded. On Thursday evening, Lucas was in the garage working on a project when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Is this Lucas Reed? The voice was male, smooth, controlled. Who's asking? My name is Nathan Holloway. I think you know who I am. Lucas's grip on the phone tightened. What do you want? I want to talk to Mara. She's not answering my calls, and I think you might know why. She's not answering because she doesn't want to talk to you. Pretty straightforward. Nathan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Right, and I'm guessing you're the reason for that. No, you're the reason for that. She left you 3 years ago. That's on you. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know enough. There was a pause, and when Nathan spoke again, his voice had an edge. Look, I don't know who you think you are, but Mara and I have history, real history. You're just some guy she's using to feel better about herself. Lucas forced himself to stay calm. If that's what you need to believe, go ahead. But she's made it clear she doesn't want contact with you. Respect that. Respect? You want to talk about respect? I was with her for 7 years. I loved her. I gave her everything. And she threw it away because she couldn't handle a little conflict. A little conflict? Lucas's voice dropped. Dangerous. You controlled her. You made her feel like she couldn't trust herself, That's not conflict. That's abuse. Nathan's tone turned cold. You need to stay out of this. This is between me and Mara. It stopped being between you and Mara when she left, and it's definitely not between you and Mara now that she's filed for a restraining order. Silence. Then quietly, she did what? You heard me. So whatever game you're playing, it's over. Leave her alone. Nathan hung up without another word. Lucas stood in the garage, adrenaline coursing through him, phone still pressed to his ear. He'd handled it wrong. He knew that. He should have hung up immediately, should have let Mara's lawyer deal with it. But hearing Nathan's voice, hearing the entitlement and manipulation dripping from every word, had triggered something protective and fierce. He went inside and found Mara in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up when he entered, immediately sensing something was off. What happened? Lucas told her. Every word, every inflection. He watched her face go pale, watched her hands still on the cutting board. He called you, she said, voice flat. Yeah. How did he get your number? I don't know. But he knows we're together. Mara set down the knife, gripping the edge of the counter. This is my fault. I should have... Stop. This is not your fault. He's escalating because he's losing control. That's on him, not you. But now he's involving you. What if he what? Shows up here? Threatens me? I'm not afraid of him, Mara, and I'm not going anywhere. She looked at him, eyes wide with fear and gratitude. You should be afraid. You don't know what he's capable of. Then tell me, what's the worst he's done? Mara hesitated, then took a shaky breath. He never hit me, but he threw things, punched walls. He'd corner me during arguments, block doorways so I couldn't leave. Once, he locked me out of the house for 3 hours in the middle of winter because I forgot to pick up his dry cleaning. Lucas felt rage building in his chest, hot and sharp. Did you call the police? No, I was too ashamed. I thought if I just tried harder, if I was better, he'd stop. Mara, I know that's not how it works. But when you're in it, you can't see clearly. You just survive. Lucas crossed the kitchen and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, and he felt her trembling. I'm not going to let him hurt you again, he said. I promise you that. You can't promise that. Watch me. They stood there holding each other, and Lucas made a decision. He'd do whatever it took to keep her safe. Whatever it took. Later that night, after Ellie was asleep, Lucas called Derek again. I need your help, he said. Mara's ex called me. He's escalating, and I need to know what our options are. Derek didn't hesitate. I'll make some calls, see what we can do to put pressure on him. But Lucas, you need to be smart about this. Don't engage with him. Don't give him anything he can use. I know. Do you? Because if he's as unstable as you're saying, provoking him could make things worse. I'm not trying to provoke him. I'm trying to protect her. I get that. But sometimes protecting someone means stepping back and letting the system work. Lucas closed his eyes. I don't trust the system. I know, but you have to try. Yeah, I will. He hung up and sat in the dark living room, staring at nothing. Mara appeared in the hallway, wrapped in one of his old sweatshirts. Can't sleep? She asked. Not really. She sat beside him, tucking her legs under her. What are you thinking about? How to fix this. You can't fix it, Lucas. Some things you just have to endure until they're over. I don't accept that. She smiled sadly. I know, but that's the reality. They sat in silence, and Lucas felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. The responsibility, the fear, the knowledge that love sometimes meant standing in the line of fire. But when Mara leaned against him, her warmth seeping into his side, he knew he'd do it 1,000 times over. Because this was what mattered, not the easy days, but the hard ones. The days when staying was a choice you had to make over and over again. And Lucas Reed had never been afraid of hard work. The restraining order was granted on a gray Monday morning in late November. Mara sat in the courtroom with her lawyer, hands folded in her lap, while the judge reviewed the evidence. Voicemails, text messages, witness statements from the police who'd responded to Nathan's appearance at her house. Lucas sat in the gallery behind her, a silent presence she could feel without turning around. Nathan wasn't there. He'd been served papers but chose not to contest them, which his lawyer claimed was a sign of good faith. Mara knew better. It was a power move, his way of saying he didn't take any of this seriously. When the judge signed the order, Mara felt relief and dread in equal measure. Relief that there was now legal protection between her and Nathan. Dread that a piece of paper wouldn't actually stop him if he decided to push. Lucas met her outside the courthouse, and she walked straight into his arms without a word. He held her tight, chin resting on top of her head. "It's done," she said against his chest. "Yeah, it is. So why don't I feel better?" "Because you know him, and you know this might not be enough." She pulled back, looking up at him. "You think he'll violate it?" "I don't know, but we're going to be ready either way." They drove back to the cabin in Lucas's truck, Mara staring out the window at the bare trees lining the highway. Thanksgiving was in 3 days, and despite everything, she found herself looking forward to it. Not because of the holiday itself, but because it would be the first one in years where she felt like she belonged somewhere. Ellie was at school when they got back, so the cabin was quiet. Mara made tea while Lucas checked his work emails, and they settled into a comfortable routine that felt both temporary and permanent. She'd been staying at the cabin for nearly 2 weeks now, and though neither of them had said it out loud, it was starting to feel less like a safety measure and more like home. "I should probably go back to my place soon," Mara said, breaking the silence. "I can't hide here forever." Lucas looked up from his laptop. "You're not hiding, you're being smart." "It feels like hiding." "Then what would make it feel different?" Mara thought about it. "I don't know, maybe just going back, reclaiming my space, proving to myself that he doesn't get to run me out of my own life." Lucas closed his laptop. "Okay, then let's do that. But not alone. I'll go with you. We'll make sure everything's secure, change the locks if we need to, install better lighting, whatever it takes to make you feel safe there." "You'd do that?" "Of course I would." Mara felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me for basic decency, Mara." "Maybe not, but I'm going to anyway." They spent the afternoon making a plan. Lucas called a locksmith, scheduled an appointment for the next day. He researched security cameras and motion sensor lights, making a list of what they'd need. Mara watched him work with a mixture of gratitude and guilt, wondering what she'd done to deserve someone who showed up like this. When Ellie came home from school, she burst through the door with her usual energy, backpack flying, talking a mile a minute about a science project and a boy who'd put glue in his hair. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Mara and Lucas sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out between them. "What are you guys doing?" she asked. "Planning," Lucas said. "Mara's going to go back to her house soon, and we're making sure it's safe." Ellie's face fell. "You're leaving?" Mara's heart clenched. "Not leaving exactly, just going back to my place. But I'll still be around, I promise." "But you've been here every day." "I know, and I've loved that. But I have my own home, and I need to go back to it eventually." Ellie looked between them, her expression serious. "Is it because of the bad man?" Mara hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, but your dad and I are making sure he can't bother me anymore." "What if he does anyway?" Lucas crouched down to Ellie's level. "Then we'll handle it. But Mara's strong, and she's not alone. She's got us, right?" Ellie considered this, then nodded slowly. "Right." "Good. Now go wash up for dinner." Ellie ran off, and Mara let out a shaky breath. "She's worried." "She cares about you. That's not a bad thing." "No. But it means if something goes wrong, it doesn't just affect me. It affects her, too." Lucas stood, crossing to where Mara sat. "Nothing's going to go wrong. We're taking every precaution. And even if Nathan tries something, the police are aware, the restraining order is in place, and you have people who will show up for you. That's more than you had before." Mara nodded, but the knot in her stomach didn't loosen. The next day they went to Mara's house together. The locksmith met them there, a friendly older man who changed every lock on the property and gave Mara 3 sets of keys. Lucas installed motion sensor lights on the front and back porches, and Mara walked through each room, reclaiming her space inch by inch. It felt strange being back, like visiting a place she used to live but no longer belonged to. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, but it felt different, smaller, less safe. Lucas found her standing in the living room, staring at the couch where she used to sit with Nathan, back when things were still good. "You okay?" he asked. I don't know. This house used to feel like mine. Now it just feels like a place where bad things happened. Then we change that. Rearrange furniture, paint walls, make it yours again. Mara turned to him. You think it's that simple? No, but I think it's a start. They spent the rest of the afternoon doing exactly that. They moved the couch to the opposite wall, rearranged the bookshelf, took down pictures that reminded Mara of her old life and replaced them with blank spaces she could fill later. By the time they finished, the house felt different. Not perfect, but better. Lucas ordered pizza for dinner, and they ate sitting on the floor because Mara's kitchen table was still covered with unopened mail. She told him about a patient she was worried about, a young guy who'd been in a motorcycle accident and wasn't taking his recovery seriously. Lucas told her about a project that was running behind schedule because the architect kept changing the plans. Normal conversation. Normal life. It felt like a small miracle. As they were cleaning up, Mara's phone rang. Unknown number. She stared at it, heart racing. Don't answer it, Lucas said. What if it's important? If it's important, they'll leave a message. The call went to voicemail, and a minute later the notification popped up. Mara put it on speaker, hands trembling. Nathan's voice filled the room, and this time there was no pretense of friendliness. I know you got that restraining order, Mara. Congratulations. You really think that's going to stop me? You think a piece of paper changes anything? You're mine. You've always been mine. And whoever that guy is you're with now, he's not going to protect you. I'll make sure of that. The message ended. Mara felt like she couldn't breathe. Lucas took the phone from her hands, saved the voicemail, and immediately called the police. He reported the violation calmly, giving them the case number from the restraining order, explaining that this was the third contact since the order was granted. The dispatcher said an officer would be in touch, but Lucas heard the apathy in her voice. One voicemail wasn't enough to arrest someone. They'd make a note. They'd follow up. But Nathan would still be out there. Lucas hung up and pulled Mara close. She was shaking, and he held her until the tremors subsided. We're not staying here tonight, he said. Lucas, no arguments. Pack a bag. We're going back to the cabin. She didn't fight him. She couldn't. The idea of staying in this house alone, knowing Nathan had just threatened her, was too much. They locked up, set the new alarm Lucas had installed, and drove back through the dark. Ellie was already asleep when they arrived, and Mara collapsed onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. Lucas sat beside her, one arm around her shoulders. I'm tired of being afraid, Mara said quietly. I know. I want to be brave. I want to stand up to him, but every time I think I've got it together, he does something that reminds me how much power he still has. He doesn't have power. He has desperation. There's a difference. It doesn't feel different. Lucas was quiet for a moment, then said, Do you trust me? Of course. Then trust me when I say this ends. One way or another, it ends. And you're going to be okay. Mara wanted to believe him. She really did. Thanksgiving came, and despite everything, it was a good day. Mara and Ellie spent the morning baking pies while Lucas prepped a turkey that was probably too big for 3 people. The cabin smelled like cinnamon and roasting meat, and for a few hours, the rest of the world fell away. They ate too much, laughed too hard, and fell asleep on the couch watching old movies. Mara woke up sometime after midnight with Ellie curled against her side and Lucas's arm draped across both of them. She stayed still, not wanting to break the moment, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. But peace didn't last. 2 days later, Lucas was at work when Derek called. We've got a problem, Derek said without preamble. Lucas stepped outside the construction trailer away from his crew. What kind of problem? Nathan Holloway was picked up last night for a DUI. He's out on bail already, but the arrest report mentions erratic behavior. The cops said he was ranting about his ex-wife, saying she'd ruined his life. They flagged it because of the restraining order. Lucas's blood ran cold. Where is he now? Unknown. But Lucas, if he's unraveling, he's dangerous. You need to be careful. Is Mara safe? For now, but I'd keep her close. Lucas thanked Derek and hung up, immediately calling Mara. She answered on the second ring. Hey, she said. Everything okay? Where are you? At work. Why? What's wrong? Lucas explained quickly, his voice tight. I need you to leave, right now. Go to the clinic's security office and wait there. I'm on my way. Lucas, I can't just leave in the middle of the day. Mara, please. Something in his tone made her stop arguing. Okay, I'm going. Lucas drove faster than he should have, heart pounding. He called the clinic's front desk, explained the situation to a receptionist who sounded appropriately alarmed, and asked them to keep Mara inside until he arrived. By the time he pulled into the parking lot, 2 security guards were standing outside the main entrance. Mara met him in the lobby, pale but composed. What's going on? Lucas told her everything Derek had said. Mara's face went from pale to ashen. He's going to come after me, she said. I know he is. Not if we're ready. They drove back to the cabin in tense silence. Lucas called the police again, reported the DUI arrest and Nathan's statements, asked if they could increase patrols near Mara's house and his property. The officer he spoke to was more receptive this time, promised to send someone by, but Lucas knew promises didn't stop desperate men. That night, Lucas didn't sleep. He sat in the living room with every light off, watching the driveway through the window. Mara was in his bed, though he doubted she was sleeping either. Ellie was safe in her room, oblivious to the danger lurking outside their small world. At 2 a.m, headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. Lucas stood, adrenaline spiking. The car moved slowly, deliberately, and parked just beyond the property line. Lucas couldn't see the driver, but he didn't need to. He knew. He texted Derek. He's here. Derek's response was immediate. I'm calling the cops. Don't engage. But Lucas was already moving. He grabbed a flashlight, stepped onto the porch, and aimed the beam at the car. The headlights shut off. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and Nathan Holloway stepped out. He looked different than Lucas expected. Not menacing or physically imposing, just ordinary. A man in jeans and a jacket, hands shoved in his pockets, walking up the driveway like he had every right to be there. You must be Lucas, Nathan called out. Lucas didn't respond. Nathan stopped at the edge of the porch light. I just want to talk to Mara. She doesn't want to talk to you. That's not for you to decide. Actually, it is. She made her choice, and she chose not to have you in her life. Nathan laughed, but it was bitter. You think you know her? You've known her what, a couple months? I was with her for 7 years. I know her better than you ever will. If you knew her at all, you'd respect her boundaries. Boundaries. Nathan spat the word. She's confused, scared. She needs someone who understands her, and that's not you. Lucas felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. You need to leave, now, before the police get here. The police. Nathan took a step closer. You think they care? You think a restraining order means anything? I loved her. I gave her everything, and she threw it away because she's too weak to handle real commitment. That's not love. That's control, and she's done being controlled. Nathan's expression darkened. You don't get to tell me what I feel. And you don't get to show up at my home in the middle of the night and make demands. They stared at each other, tension crackling in the cold air. Then Nathan smiled, and it was the most unsettling thing Lucas had seen. This isn't over, Nathan said quietly. Yeah, it is. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Nathan heard them too. He looked back at his car, then at Lucas, and for a moment Lucas thought he might do something stupid, but then Nathan turned and walked away, got in his car, and drove off just as the police cruiser rounded the bend. Lucas gave his statement to the officers, 2 young guys who took notes and promised to file a report. They drove around the property, checked the perimeter, then left with assurances that they'd increase patrols. Lucas didn't feel reassured. He went inside and found Mara standing in the hallway, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red from crying. I heard everything, she whispered. Lucas crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. It's okay. He's gone. For now. For good. He violated the restraining order. They'll arrest him. Will they? Or will he get a warning and come back angrier? Lucas didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, Derek called with news. Nathan had been arrested an hour after leaving Lucas's property. The combination of violating the restraining order and the DUI charge meant he was being held without bail until his hearing. It would be at least a week, maybe more. Mara cried when Lucas told her, not from fear this time, from relief. It's really over? She asked. For now, but we'll make sure it stays that way. The hearing happened 10 days later. Mara testified, her voice steady, as she recounted years of manipulation and control, the fear she'd lived with, the threats that continued even after she left. Lucas sat in the gallery again, watching her stand up for herself in a way he knew cost her everything. The judge wasn't sympathetic to Nathan. Between the restraining order violations, the DUI, and the testimony, he was sentenced to 6 months in jail and mandatory counseling. When he got out, the restraining order would be extended for 5 years. Mara walked out of the courtroom a different person, lighter, freer. Lucas met her outside and she threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "It's over," she said. "It's really over." "Yeah," Lucas said, holding her tight. "It really is." They drove back to the cabin where Ellie was waiting with Mrs. Calloway. When Mara walked through the door, Ellie ran to her, hugging her fiercely. "You're safe now," Ellie said. Mara knelt down, brushing hair from Ellie's face. "Yeah, sweetheart, I am." That night, after Ellie went to bed, Lucas and Mara sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching stars appear one by one in the clear winter sky. "I've been thinking," Mara said, "about my house." "Yeah?" "I don't want to live there anymore. Too many bad memories. I think I'm going to sell it." Lucas looked at her. "And then what?" Mara met his eyes, her expression soft but sure. "I don't know, but I know I want to be here. With you. With Ellie. If you'll have me." Lucas felt his throat tighten. "Are you asking to move in?" "I'm asking if there's room in your life for me. Permanently." Lucas didn't hesitate. "There's always been room. I was just waiting for you to be ready." Mara smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm ready." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and it felt like coming home. Weeks turned into months. Mara sold her house, moved her things into the cabin, and slowly transformed it into their home. She painted the kitchen, hung curtains Ellie helped pick out, filled the shelves with books and the fridge with baked goods. Ellie thrived, her early wariness replaced with genuine affection. She started calling Mara by her first name, but sometimes, when she was tired or happy, she'd slip and say something that sounded like family. Lucas proposed on a quiet Saturday morning in March. No grand gestures or elaborate plans. Just the two of them in the kitchen, Mara making coffee, Lucas watching her with a ring he'd bought weeks earlier burning a hole in his pocket. "Marry me," he said. Mara turned, spatula in hand, and blinked. "What?" "Marry me. I know it's fast. I know we've only been together 8 months, but I don't need more time to know you're it for me. You're it, Mara. So marry me." She set down the spatula, crossed the kitchen, and cupped his face in her hands. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying. "Yes, of course, yes." They told Ellie over breakfast. She cheered, asked if she could be the flower girl, and then went back to her pancakes like it was the most natural thing in the world. The wedding was small, just family and close friends, held in the clearing behind the cabin on a warm day in June. Mara wore a simple white dress, and Lucas couldn't stop smiling. Ellie walked down the aisle scattering wildflowers, taking her job very seriously, and when the officiant pronounced them married, Lucas kissed his wife like she was the only person in the world. Derek clapped him on the back afterward. "Remember when you didn't want to go on that blind date?" Lucas laughed. "Best worst decision I ever made." "It wasn't the worst decision," Mara said, sliding her arm around his waist. "It was the best accident." That night, after the guests left and Ellie fell asleep surrounded by wedding cake crumbs, Lucas and Mara sat on the porch in their wedding clothes, exhausted and happy. "You think we'll make it?" Mara asked. Lucas looked at her, this woman who'd walked into his life because of a joke, who'd stayed because of choice, who'd fought her way through fear to find something real. "Yeah," he said. "I think we will." And he meant it. Because love wasn't about perfect beginnings or easy paths. It was about showing up, even when it was hard. It was about choosing each other, again and again, through fear and doubt and uncertainty. It was about building something that lasted. And Lucas Reed had always been good at building things that lasted.